But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the work I've been doing, studying essentially the universe, and in other words, really studying creation, either from like the astronomy side of things, where I started my career, and then later on moved to work at CERN to study the composition of matter at its most fundamental level. And what I would like to share with you today is another perspective of how we look at science, from the perspective of how can we relate to it, how can we understand it, as far as the key and fundamental questions that are facing every human being essentially are concerned. And we'll cover more of that as we go on. I will reserve some time at the end for questions, but if you have any burning questions, of course, please raise your hand or just ask them. We'll be happy to have this a little bit interactive if we can. And I have lots of material, but we'll try to go a little bit fast on it. And the first thing I wanted to say is, when you look out to the universe, what do we see? And that's the basic question that every scientist starts with, is what is this universe that we look at, that we live in, and what do we see? What is it made out of? And that's probably one of the key questions that every human being asks, because we find ourselves in a very unique situation where you have an orderly universe out there, and we are faced with very kind of critical questions, asking why is it all there, how is it coming to be, and what is our purpose here? And going all the way from the big, so we'll start at the level of galaxies and so on, and we'll go to the very, very small, and you will see as we go through that there is order at every stage of the universe when we look at it and when we examine it and study it. And if we look at the night sky, actually, like I'm trying to kind of set a little bit the perspective so that we see like the scales that we are dealing with. So if you look at the night sky just with your eye, most of the light that you will see are stars in our galaxy. And then with your naked eye, probably the farthest you can see is the closest galaxy to us, which is called Andromeda. It's about 2.5 million light years away. So we'll start there in kind of looking at the galaxies. And then we'll move into looking at the very small. And I just picked a random example of hair, and then we'll go down into the basic composition of matter. And just to kind of get it a little bit interactive, if I ask you here, like in this picture, so this is a picture of a sky, night sky. Like how many individual stars do you think we see in this picture if you stare at it for a second? Just order of magnitude, doesn't have to be correct, but if I looked at individual stars, how many do you think we're looking at?
1,000.
That's a good start. Trillions. Stars, yes, probably trillions. Individual stars, actually, they are not a lot, actually, in this picture. It's only 3, really. Like you see them, like if you can see the cursor. So you only have like really 3 stars, like one here, you just see the diffraction. But then the rest, this is where it gets a little bit, every point that you see is a galaxy. And every galaxy has in the order of 300 to 400 billion stars in it. And one more question. How do you think, like, how much of the sky do you think we're looking at in this picture? Is it like the size of, like the northern, hemisphere? Is it the size of New York? Is it the size of, what do you think it is? Like when you look at the sky, how much of the sky would this be? Yeah, you can make a guess. Yeah, how little? So this is a deep field view of a space-based telescope. And basically, this is the size of about a grain of sand, basically extended at arm's length. And then you're looking at the sky. And if you look very deep in that direction, you get this picture that has about 10,000 galaxies in it. And every dot of these is a galaxy. So probably you have like trillions, like tens of trillions of stars in this picture here. And this is just to set the magnitude of scale of the universe that we live in, which sometimes we completely forget about. And as we zoom in, of course, if you can zoom in into a galaxy, you see a galaxy. If you zoom in even further into each galaxy, actually, in these areas, so you have the hot core that has lots of stars, so high concentration of stars. But then if you look at the spirals of the galaxy, that's areas of star formation that are very rich in essentially interstellar gas. And you see pictures like this of young stars that are currently in formation, which sets the stage of how magnificent the universe we live in is. And then, of course, if you go into stars, you start seeing like rocks, essentially planets, moons, and all of that. This is just a picture of our Earth being seen from the moon. So we kind of went into the universe to kind of set the scale and like the idea of how big things are and how. So now let's kind of move back into kind of like closer to us, and just I took an example of like here. This is 15 centimeters away, and I have a little movie to just kind of zoom in into like a single strand of hair. So as you go in, you start seeing essentially the health structure, which is kind of has like scales like fish, basically. That and as you go in, you start seeing these fibrils that are the microfibers that are making up the cells in each hair strand. And as you dive deeper, and I don't know if you can see the scale at the bottom here. So now we're at the micrometer. That's where we start seeing these fibrils. Then we start seeing the keratin, which is like the basic protein that is making up the hair. And then as you go deeper into the nanometer scale, you start seeing even more layers. And the interesting thing that I want to point out here is either you look out in the universe far, or as you look down, at every layer you see complexity and structure. That only gets more as you look deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is a common phenomena that every scientist know of, is that the more you study, the more you realize that there is a lot more to be studied, essentially. And this is getting,
One strand of hair?
Just one strand, yes. And then now we are getting down to like basic molecules that make up life. Essentially, you have carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and then we're zooming in into one single atom of carbon, and like way in the middle. And this is what also we don't realize a lot, is that most of the atoms are actually empty space, and between the orbitals of the electrons and all the way to the nucleus, we have huge amounts of space. So if an atom was the size of New York City, for example, with all its boroughs, the nucleus that we're looking at would be basically the size of a small ball, like a football ball, essentially. That's essentially the scale at which we're seeing these and like down at the atomic level. Then we have protons and neutrons that make up the nucleus, and then you can even zoom even further into the nucleus. To, for example, this is an example of a proton that has quarks, and that's where the title of the talk starts, is when stars and quarks speak, which are the basic building blocks. Now, there might be more down there, but this is what we know so far. We got to the level of quarks, and there is no way for us to tell whether that's. There is definitely more structure to be uncovered.
In the chat box, there are some
questions.
I think you can just check if there is any comment.
Okay, I think. Unrelated to that, to the topic. All right. So then, like in science, like we've been studying matter a lot, trying to understand its composition, and we came with a standard model that describes what are the building blocks. And this is where you see this picture kind of summarizes everything. In fact, if 99% of everything we see and touch is actually made out of all these three elements that you see here. So you have the quarks, up and down quark, and then you have electrons, and then this is 99%, and then the rest are either force carriers that mediate interactions between like the particles. For example, we have electromagnetic force, for example, which is photons, essentially, that everything related to light. Or you have the weak nuclear force that is responsible for powering the sun, essentially, in like the energy that is being generated in the sun. And then we have, for example, gluons that are really responsible for how the quarks are bound in the So something that I would like to, anyway, like there is a lot of composition, and we have distilled down very far in terms of our understanding of how these things work. But one thing that I would like to, like as scientists describe, like the language we use is very critical to be wary of when we say, for example, that matter is formed of and it does this. What do we really mean by that? So this is where I will get to that, but I want to make a distinction between what is the scientific findings of description of the universe, and then the language we're using that is maybe our interpretation or very biased interpretation of giving qualities to the matter itself. And this is really the topic I would like to focus on this talk. But let's keep exploring. So like this is kind of like along the same lines of showing you kind of how like essentially the different layers of matter are. And just like a fun fact, if you will, just because we didn't really set the scale for I mean, we did go through that movie to give you the scale of how, like this, how the different distances are related as we get down to the quark level. But just for another example to kind of illustrate this, if the number of molecules, water molecules that you have in a cup of water, essentially, if you took is larger than the number of cups of water we have on Earth, essentially, in the sense that if you wanted just to basically scoop water from all the oceans, you will not get to the number of molecules that we have just in a cup of water. And this is just very, like when you think about it, every one of these molecules has to basically satisfy so many conditions to the point of like quenching your thirst, for example. And it's very critical to understand that the interconnection between like the very small to the very large is so well made to the point of you start asking questions. Can this really happen randomly? Can this really happen by accident? Is some of the questions that every human being should be thinking about as we explore the universe. And one thing that I would like to say is all we can do as humans is we look at the evidence in front of us, like for anything, including interpreting our place in the universe. And when you start asking these questions, you really see that like following the evidence is the key for us understanding our place in the world. And we use evidence to understand or try to go beyond what our senses can perceive to try to understand how even this matter is made out of. Like we don't see the atoms, but we have instruments that give us evidence for the existence of something that I cannot directly interact with. And that is a principle that is very important to generalize in all aspects of when I cannot understand something, I have to use my evidence that is presented to me to try to understand the thing in question. It's a fun fact, but everything we've discussed so far, including the stars, galaxies, like everything around us, is essentially about 5% of the stuff that we know that is out there. Actually, in fact, it's 0.5%. The other 4.5% is all interstellar gas that is between galactic systems. So, which means like what we know is a very, very small fraction, and everything that is in our world that we realize everything in the world around us is really like a really small fraction of what we know is out there. And the rest, we know it's there, but we have no idea what it is. And this just tells you again, like sometimes you hear, especially people just getting into like sciences and physics, they're like, science knows everything, we explained everything. And it's not even close to the reality of things. And everybody who actually studied these topics realize how little actually we know about the world we live in and how many layers there are that seem almost infinite. As you peel one layer, you find more layers into it, either in the very small or in the very large. Yes.
Questions right now in the
yeah, if there is a question, yes. I reserved some time for questions at the end, but any burning questions, please go ahead.
So if you go
yes.
2 slides speed, no, one more. Now, you say evidence invites us. And what we see, evidence is what we see in the universe.
Right.
Or
yeah.
other scientifically or with naked eyes.
Yes.
Invites us to see beyond what our physical senses can perceive. Now, if our physical senses beyond it,
right?
How are we going to perceive them?
Yes.
I'm not using my physical senses.
Yeah.
Eye, nose,
right.
tongue,
touch.
skin,
Yes.
Hair,
yeah.
Ears.
Yes.
These are the 5 senses.
Right.
So if I don't see something or have an experience with something with my physical senses, and evidence invites us to use beyond what?
Yeah.
How am I going to communicate with what is beyond?
Right. So there are 2 answers to this, and like the first layer is, it's true that the physical world will only understand or make conclusions about the physical world. So if I see water seeping through the crack, let's say my assumption is that there is water on the other side, or there is a water leak. So I don't see the water on the other side, but by seeing water seeping through the crack in the wall, I can infer that there is water on the other side. This is the type of evidence, when we say like physical evidence, we can
Invites us, as you say.
right. So on the other hand, like the second part is when I see, I think when I see the structure, the perfection in the word, in the order of things, it invites me to ask questions. What is the source of this order that I am observing? What is the source of why? How is it coming to be? And yes, but the critical thing is my ability to ask the question of where is this coming from? Like,
what is this ability? What, so intellect, human intellect,
that's one of them.
human
Yes.
reasoning, human emotions, feelings.
Yes.
All this
Right.
non-physical side of human being.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's
Spirit,
yeah. Like when
whatever you call it.
when I look at a flower that is beautiful, like not even getting into like the like, it invites me to understand or question. I guess to your line of thinking, it invites me to question. There is this beauty here. What is the source of it? Where is it coming from?
Do it with what? Human.
All of my human eventually, yes. But all of it is based on my human senses, like all my human qualities,
No.
right?
Intellect.
Everything, yeah, like emotions, intellect, reasoning, yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
what makes us human beings.
Yes, absolutely.
So beyond that side of human being can reach out to beyond.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, please.
I was going back to the invite thing. Would you say that it's an instinct, like an instinctive response to need to interpret what you find beyond the physical, like I'll use the data,
right?
I need to interpret this in terms of my emotional experience of what I've just seen.
Yeah.
Would you say that's an instinctive response, or is it something you'd have to work to come to?
I don't think I have to work to it, because if I see, like, I think the examples I was making is if I see a flower,
yes,
I instinctively say, like, feel the beauty, and instinctively I feel like this, there is something beyond in there. It does not, like, why a collection of like basically matter that is not lifeless, that especially when we start like looking at it from a perspective of dead matter, how would it know me to the point of like triggering that emotion of like appreciation of beauty? I don't do any, like, I do feel it is intrinsic to us.
It is intrinsic.
It's intrinsic. Like
hardwired.
Yes.
That in human beings automatically question.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Now you don't have to work for it.
Yeah, it comes to me.
It automatically functions.
That part of it, but
Unless
the part of the atoms and the scientific part of it, that requires a lot of study.
Yes, but I am trying to expose like the complexity of the universe, but it doesn't have to be like to make these conclusions. Again, like a flower, like I think the key message really is like at every level, like there is for me something to consume as far as trying to understand what is the purpose of my being here, right? So it doesn't have like, I think the point is like we can go deep in matter, and anyway we don't know much, right? That's what I'm trying to get at, and we can go out and explore, but at the end of the day, I think what Brother Ali was saying about like I already have like these intrinsic questions in my mind that needs answering either from my reason or from my intellect, from my emotions, that dead matter can't answer, or at least I cannot arrive to it essentially from that perspective.
Would it be safe to say that the data alone is not enough to satisfy you, but that you need something more meaningful to go with, like a meaningful narrative to go with that before you can be satisfied?
Yes. And I can also say I'm not just intellect, I'm not just emotions, I'm the whole thing, right? So I can't separate it, say like, no, like yes, data, but all of it, like I need all of it to make me essentially try to kind of communicate with the world and the universe. I think you had a question?
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier about the atom, how there's the nucleus and most of it is empty, or most of it is space.
Yes.
But I wanted to know what you categorize as space. Do we call it space because we don't know what it is, or does it actually feel for something?
So let's put it this way: when we probe, we find nothing there as far as our instruments can detect. Let's just put it that way. Like space, like actually, like, and we know this, that there is nothing. There is, let me put it this way: there is no such thing as nothingness. Like even if you take this room and empty everything out of it, there is always activity, and we can actually measure it to the point where we have actually a baseline energy of vacuum. So vacuum has an energy level. So because there is always things happening, particles coming in and out of existence all the time. And that is, in a sense, that is emptiness. But is it really emptiness in the sense of there is nothing? Like one thing that is true, actually, whenever you study these, especially as you get into like essentially like very, very small things, quantum realm, essentially, there is no such thing as static. There is no such thing as nothingness. There is always things being renewed, created all the time, and we can measure this actually. So like again, like this is where it gets problematic when you're using secular language of science to try to describe phenomena, and you say, yeah, there is nothing. Well, yes, like our instruments can't, but then is there really nothing there? And I think scientifically, like there is not, like the universe is not a static thing. It's changing every moment, even when you look at things like empty space or like space between like the atoms, for example. So that's what we understand, at least at looking at the. Okay, all right. Yes.
If something is measurable, and you can measure it,
Yeah.
it means it is perfectly, finely tuned within an order.
Right.
So if it is not orderly, you cannot measure it.
Right, by
So
definition.
Keeps changing.
By definition, yes.
Yeah, by definition.
Yeah.
So that orderliness shows purpose.
Right.
Right. In order to fulfill this mission.
Right. The fit. We'll get to the fit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Let's see if there is a question here. We can't hear. Okay. I will repeat what Brother Ali is saying. That's the comment in the. Okay. So let's move on. And okay. So this is the point we're trying to get to. Is so. Like how do we like when we see all of these things, so you realize there is order out there, right? And then we have instruments to detect that order. So what is interesting is this idea of there is a perfect fit between the world out there and then our senses. I think also getting to your question from earlier, to the point where which makes me realize that the creator of this universe that I study, and then my eye that is observing this universe, must have the same creator. Otherwise it won't make sense. Like if I'm not able to perceive or appreciate the beauty, then the beauty has no meaning. And the fact that my senses and the universe are complementary, like there is that fit, that only makes me conclude that there is only one thing that has to whoever created the universe is my creator as well. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Even like logically, it does not make sense. And then, I think you asked about the Quran, so we're getting to the Quran. And this is like I like this ayah that talks this concept of pairs or zawjain, that everything is created in pairs. You can understand it, classically as a man and woman, black and white, night and day. But you can also understand it as my human abilities and then the universe that they are interacting with.
Qualities of the universe manifested in the qualities of the universe, and all the tools ingrained in me, or all the things taught in me, communicating with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is the pair.
Right. Yeah.
And what the Quran is mentioning about, we have created everything in pair, mutual communication.
Yeah.
it means, not only, as you said, wife and
right,
women and men.
right. Yes, just repeating what Brother Ali said is everything is created in pairs in the sense that myself, if all the tools I have, and then what the universe is offering, I'm able to connect and understand it. Sorry, say that again.
The understanding.
The understanding, yes, yes.
With the stomach and the food.
Yes, yes,
For example.
yes, that's a good example.
That's what I like.
Yeah, stomach and food. Yeah, and then so then okay, I think coming back to your question from earlier, like, and once we observe this, we seek more. We want more answers. Like this is ingrained within us. So then science typically asks, where did we come from? Like you find it in like lots of like literature. It's like like always like it's a puzzling question. Where did we come from? What are we made of? What are the rules behind all of this? Is there anything else we don't see? So this is typically what science is focused on. And yes, these are valid questions and we can expand upon them. Who made these rules? What is the meaning of it all? Like we have to be able to answer these questions. And I think for me, like the most important question is that we take for granted is actually our existence itself, because typically we take our existence for granted and then start making judgments about the world. But let's step back and then even look at my existence. What is the source of my existence? Typically, so from the naturalistic science, I like this verse, actually. It resonates quite well in the sense that Haman came and asked, build me a high tower so that I may reach the causes. I want to know what are the causes of the skies, in the sense that including my work, we're building these complex instruments, and the claim is like we're trying to know what is the cause of all causes. And we go into the skies, we go deep into the atoms, trying to look for something, right? Trying to give like deity and trying to give like power to these things, thinking that they are the source of our existence. And this is where, you know, like when it's very important to, you know, like refer to the scripture as well to kind of try to understand how this is done. But the key thing I want to say as part of the source of existence, and like also with respect to time, is that like every moment is completely created anew, and then what we perceive as time is just the continuous kind of renewal of that creation, and our perception feels or makes it as if it's a continuous process that is not renewed. It's that things are being pushed. So I push, for example, a ball. That is the action. I'm the causer of that action. But then you can go through this logic, and I will get to it in a second. But the key thing I would like you to kind of take away is every slice of the universe is being created at this moment, every time. And matter itself is not creating that. And we'll get more into this. But let's just start with this question, which is very important. What is the source of existence? And let's take an example, actually. And this is general theme with science, is that we're trying to describe the multitude of phenomena that we observe around us, and we're trying to distill them as much as we can to a set of fundamental principles. So that, for example, typical science, secular science, will say there is the concept called gravity. If I look at the planetary motions of how, you know, like things are orbiting each other based on their gravitational pull from masses, or if I look at the tides, or if I look at an object falling, they are all caused by gravity. So that's the language that we typically use. And then we go into kind of this rabbit hole of like, okay, this is causing this. Okay, then what caused that? Then this is causing this. And we try to kind of keep going down that rabbit hole of like, what are the causes? What is the cause of the causes? I think that's what the verse was saying, right? And like this is where we need to kind of revisit the language a little bit, in the sense that coming back to the slide about source of existence, the multitude of phenomena around us, we should change it from can be described, but are brought into existence. This is a conscious act. It's not an accident that we found these laws that are out there. This is a conscious act of creation, and are being brought into existence with these fundamental principles and rules. And this is general. Everything is interconnected, and I think the question was about emptiness, and I was mentioning like nothing is empty. Everything is alive, and everything is being brought into existence continuously. because everything is interconnected, if anything, it is a proof, or at least an evidence, we were talking about evidence earlier, that whoever is creating one thing must necessarily be the creator of every other thing, because we know every other thing is connected to every other thing, essentially. So that's why, yes, go ahead.
You crossed out can be described by fundamental principle.
Yes.
Why did you say that it doesn't make sense? So crossed out.
Because the assumption here can be described as passive, as if the universe itself is the source of this order. In a sense, for me, I wanted to make it explicit that the order that we observe is brought into existence, is not finding itself accidentally, following certain laws.
So how do you define the fundamental principles in quote unquote?
Right. So fundamental principles is the order we see, is the renewal, is the order we see that we are currently observing. So that renewal of that order that is always coming into existence the same, with a very, like every day, the sun rises and sets, and you have the motion of the, the earth around the sun, right? So that order is being maintained and kept all the time. Then if I say, if I want to be kind of hide behind the language, I say, yeah, like gravity is describing this, but that's an interpretation. It is a phenomenon we're observing, but I'm giving it my interpretation. And I want to be precise with my language, saying that it's not by itself following a fundamental principle. It is being brought into existence with that order that I am observing and experiencing.
So the communication between whether the fundamental principles are making it,
right,
or it is made in this way, then I observe the fundamental principles are really respected,
right,
while they are being brought into existence. Can I give you an example?
Please,
For example,
yes.
I came to this, I have been coming to this building maybe more than 13 years. Now, for example, anytime I come here at 8 p.m., doors are closed. That's the principle. I see that 8 p.m., doors are closed. 8 p.m., doors are closed. I say, my friend Tarek, why did I say Tarek? Khalid, this is the principle of this building. 8 o'clock, it closes, right? You say, because of this principle, the doors are closed. Or the doors are closed, that is why I conclude the principles. This is the principle of this building. That's why you said, can we describe the principle? No, this is my conclusion.
Right.
So because the doors are closed at 8 p.m., I said there is a fundamental principle in this building.
Yeah. This is very important.
By naming it. Naming it. Not in physical reality.
Yes. Like this is, honestly, this is like this is the heart of the matter, in the sense of, do we attribute disorder to the things themselves? Which, like, when you think about it, is like, doesn't make sense. Or do we attribute the order we see to something beyond the go ahead.
I do this, right?
Yes. Don't break your phone.
No, this fell because of gravity.
Right.
But I dropped it.
Sure.
Right? So you're saying this is described by me, by gravity dropping, but there is an active person that made a thing fall. So
yes.
Saying we can see the sun and the moon.
Yes.
And we describe their motion in terms of the fundamental principles of gravity that are actorless.
Right.
Because they're just happening.
Right.
But there is something that dropped them for gravity to take over. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. So we can take that this is an example, right? We can follow that logic. Yes, absolutely. But in the description of the language that we use, we say these fundamental laws. I saw the phone dropping. I didn't see, like, that is the source of the like I don't see the action. That is the source of this drop in itself. It's a good example.
Excellent example. Thank you for bringing it. But the language is very sensitive.
Yeah.
This falls because of gravity.
Yeah.
What is gravity?
Yeah. Really. All right.
What is gravity? Because it always falls, I call it gravity.
Yeah.
This principle is gravity principle.
Right.
Law of gravity, I call it.
Yeah.
But there is no such thing there. The doors of the building closes at 8 o'clock, and this is the principle of this building. Doors close at 8 p.m. This is the principle. Principle is closing the door, or because the doors are closed, we call it principle.
Correct. Yeah.
Every time it is created following this way, then I describe it as gravity. Gravity is my description. There is no physical existence of gravity.
Right. Yeah. Like,
so it falls because it is created in this way.
So the language is very critical. It's very important.
Cause and cause instead of cause and effect.
I mean, like, so yeah. So like, I think there is no cause and effect. Is that we perceive it as, so we perceive it as cause and effect. But
what I'm saying
yes,
is when it comes to the creation or the creator,
yeah,
it doesn't always have to be cause and effect, because we're not, something can happen, but if it's existent and that's the way it's created, then it's not always cause and effect, it's cause and cause.
In a way, yes. Like the causation, like the correlation of the event is not implying causation, essentially, right? That's what you're trying to say. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Cool. All right. I do have the example in gravity, so we can go through it. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to tie this from this abstract theoretical conversation and bring it into like something more
please
grounded and actually specifically something emotional.
Sure.
So like we've got two interpretations for it rains versus a creator makes it rain.
Right.
That's fundamentally what we're talking about. My question to you is, depending on your interpretation of the evidence, the science, so to speak, there's going to be a psychological consequence, right? Your interpretation will affect how you experience, well, being human, being alive, right?
Yeah.
So what are the consequences of giving the matter and the mechanics all the credit versus giving it to the creator? Like, what are the consequences on you as a person?
Yeah, it's a very good point in the sense that on one hand, it's very puzzling, right? Like you see the order and then you see everything is like well made, and then you don't you attribute it to the thing themselves, almost like you're like, what is the point? Who is going to take care of me? Really, like we know that there is an end for everyone, right? So you feel like it's a very lonely world when you think about it from that perspective. If you were given the qualities of sustenance and so on to the matter itself, I mean, to your point, like psychologically, is very taxing on a human being that is earning and yearning for staying alive and looking for like the kind of like essentially stay in existence, right? Yearning for this existence. It's very daunting to think and to associate everything, including everything that makes me up, to the matter itself, right? So it's a very, very lonely place to be. There is no meaning. Yes.
It's just things happening.
Right. Yes.
I kind of got the opposite from what you were saying. Like I thought about quantum physics and the 6 degrees of separation and how we're all interconnected and everything, all matter is connected. So there is, I wasn't looking at it as loneliness. I was looking at it the opposite way, that if everything is interconnected, there is that source of being all around us, then we have that connection. Because
your interpretation was that there is a source behind this, right? Yeah. But if you interpret it as the things themselves are the source.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you erased it can be described,
right,
and connected it to the source, that's what I understood.
Right. So it is psychologically appeasing. But beyond that, it's really a necessary conclusion that, like whatever makes up the things knows me, right? Like, so it can't be, like the paint in the painting, right?
The fit, as you mentioned,
Yes,
the fit is very strong
right,
proof, and
right.
it's actually maybe it's like because I have this strong relationship with existence, it has to mean something.
Right.
Somebody said something once. I'll finish on this point. They're saying if you describe what atheism is, because that's atheism essentially, right? You come here on accident, you suffer on accident, and then you leave on accident.
It's very,
That's essentially
yeah.
it.
That's daunting.
Yeah, that's daunting. Yeah. So I wanted to, yeah.
understand that the
Go back.
previous, for example, only this slide needs to be studied for a week, I think.
I know.
Lots of important comments you have written on the continuous renewal at every level, at every moment.
Right.
Yeah, what does it mean? Continuous renewal, big question. So the from the particles to the galaxies, the universe is interconnected.
Yes.
Lots of examples
Yeah.
taken. The creator of one thing, look at this, like a philosopher. The creator of one thing must necessarily be the creator of all. Look at it.
Yeah.
But
So,
we are just passing by.
I know, because
I know your limitations. You have many.
right, but I think, but actually, you make actually a good point, because actually, if we took away anything from this, is probably this slide. This is very, very important, just because like when I talk to people that like hear about science, and generally, like they say, oh, like science answered this. Oh, like science will find out. It didn't find it out, but it will find it out later. And the assumption there is like this. It comes from the idea that in other religious traditions of like this world was created, set into motion, and kind of let be. While that's not how we see, like that's not how the Quran speaks about existence. That's not satisfying to me to think there is a creator out there a long time ago, kind of set things into motion, and now he kind of lifted his hands and is not involved anymore. That's not a satisfying, as a scientist or like as a human being, it's not a satisfying explanation. And that's why I kind of drilled down into this. This graph specifically is like science is always trying to find, okay, what are the causes back, like in the back you hear like they didn't understand tender, they thought it was like God's being angry, right? And then when science understood tender, then they say, okay, like these are just all tales, they make no sense, right? So like there is that idea of like science will catch up to kind of close the gaps, but that's not what we're talking about here. That's not what we're saying. Is at every level, every connection, there is an act of creation that is happening. You don't need to go look for the causes of the causes that we were describing from the verse earlier. We don't need to go to the Big Bang. We don't need to go down to the... At every level, there is an act of creation that is being renewed. And it is necessarily like what we observe, because everything is interconnected, because everything is being created perfectly, it must have a creator, and the creator of one thing must necessarily be the creator of everything. Otherwise, the word does not make sense. Like the observation of this word does not make sense. Okay, all right. Let's go through the example of gravity. I think the question then we ask, which we started with, is, like when you use the language of gravity is responsible for this fall, then the question is like, well, can really gravity cause this? And then you start asking, like, what are the properties of gravity that needs to be satisfied in order for me to attribute the action of falling things, the action of the planetary motions, the actions of the tides, and everything in between? What are the properties that needs to be satisfied for me to attribute these to gravity, to say gravity is the source of this existence, for instance? And then you start seeing, okay, like everything relies on, like our life relies on the very precise calibration of the position of Earth going around the sun at a very, very specific position. You change it just a little bit, like essentially the conditions as we know them will no longer be satisfied. And everything in between. So the actions of stars and galaxies far away are impacting me here. And this essentially this means that this gravity, this abstract thing, has to have consciousness. It has to have, it is a conscious act of creation that is happening, that needs to know me, it needs to know the other planets, it needs to have free will, it needs to have knowledge of all these parameters that need to be satisfied. It has to have purpose. It has to have the kind of the ability to create. So this is what is required for gravity to attribute the act of these actions to directly, right? And then I ask the question, okay, what are the actual properties of gravity? And I say, well, it operates blindly. It has no will. It does the same thing over and over and over again as I observe it from the outside. It cannot choose. Like, it's not like one day it says, well, I'm going to throw the Earth on the left rather than the right this time, right? Like, or like today I wake up and then I fly instead of fall, right? Like, it doesn't happen, right? So it's really following an order. It is it does not have any fundamental understanding as far as we can observe. So I have no proof, or I have no, going back to the evidence that we were discussing, I have no evidence that gravity has any of these qualities, right? So then the question becomes, well, can I really attribute it can I really attribute like the act of creation to gravity? And I'm going to, just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip a few slides, and I'm just going to go to this one, which is essentially the language of materialists, right? The problem is that, so there is two things. There is like the scientific observation of the world around us, which is completely valid, and that's what we want to do. We want to study the universe, right? And then there is the interpretation. The problem is like these two are usually like conflated in the sense that people interpret as they're presented the science, and that happens a lot. And in fact, so that's why you hear things like, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's a particle, Higgs boson, doesn't matter. But it's you say this particle is decaying, and this particle is acting. And I'm guilty of this. This is my paper. I wrote this, and I said this. I said the Higgs acts this way, right? In order to get published, otherwise they won't publish my paper. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, this is cheating. Like, the language is cheating in the sense that, yes, we hide behind the disguise of like trying to present the facts in a way that is not biased, but we are biased in our language, in how we, because we attribute these actions to the things themselves. And the example here that I have is like you look at a statue, like a marble statue, and then obviously there is, like you say, like there is art, like there is clear art. Would it make sense if I said, now the marble made the nose and made the like the material itself that this sculpture is made out of, they themselves did this, like the hair and all of that? It just doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. But we do that in science. We say that the things that make up the things are acting, they are doing. This is the language of science. And it is intrinsically biased language, and we have to call it out, and we have to be very careful about that, because of this, like this very biased view. And it is an interpretation, because that's, I think, the other part is that's the other part that I want to add is, we typically say, no, science doesn't deal with philosophy, doesn't deal with like religion, doesn't deal. No. We're just saying what's out there. The problem is when it conflates with interpreting as well what we are observing without using language that is neutral, essentially. This is not saying that we should not study the universe. In fact, it's the opposite. We actually should definitely study the universe. That's what we are here to do, as much as we can, observing like the spring and like how like the trees are coming back to life. This is observing the universe. But we need to use the right language for that. We covered this already, but the gist is that what we see as order are the acts of bringing things into existence, and that is called creation, right? Because we see that repetition that is happening orderly every time, we conflate it as saying things like the gravity is falling, like making the object fall, right? Because it is an order, like it is repeated, it is being created in that way. So the key thing here really is like every moment in existence is a new creation, is being continuously being renewed. Either from every angle you look at it, That is the key message that we should be clear on. And every moment is a unique creation. The creation of every moment requires every other bit of the universe to be held together to make that moment happen. And that can only be done if you have an absolute source that can control everything. Like this is a beautiful verse of, essentially, that's how I would understand this verse, in the sense that it's saying every moment he's actively bringing about a new affair. He's actively in renewing the creation as we observe it, actively, continuously renewing the universe as we observe it. This is a really nice, they call this picture the pillars of creation. I don't know if you've seen it before. This is like essentially the creation of stars, but it is true. These are the pillars of creation. The universe is being created every single moment. So we discuss essentially these qualities of the universe, like what they need to be for me to be able to, for them to be able to exist, or to be brought into existence. And I can use my reasoning to like think through these and try to make these conclusions for myself. And I like this quote saying, the eye sees the piece of art, and we see the universe as an art. It's the way it is being created and collected. And then but the intellect, what we can conclude, our intellect sees the artist, sees the act of creation that is beyond the physical universe that we're currently observing. There is a bunch of quotes from agnostics that are talking about how wonderful the universe is, but without really getting into this conclusion of like what is the source of this existence, that I will skip. So kind of time check, because we are at 7. Should we wrap up, or I don't know what typically do we have like a hard stop at 7? For how long? Like 10 minutes? All right, we'll keep going. I mean, I won't be offended if you want to leave. Please do.
10 minutes.
Too much?
No.
Too,
It's fine.
it's fine. Okay, all right.
For me.
Take your time.
Okay.
All
All right. If you need to leave, please. All right.
We're holding you up, maybe.
No. I'm here for you. I'm here to discuss this. I'm very passionate about these topics, as you can see. So I would stay here all night. This is the kind of oftentimes like neglected question that gets asked, is like not really using any religious terminology, not really, just like as an observer of this world. Like you can ask yourself, like as we're seeing things, we're studying the universe, we're looking at it, right? How can something that is so perfect, right, which by definition, from everything we see, can only happen by an endless source, or by a conscious, powerful source that can really bring the whole universe as we observe it, from like the very small and to the very large, at all scales, bring it all into existence. So how can something so perfect come from things, the matters, that don't have any of those qualities? It's just a contradiction, at least to me. And to be honest, like I've talked to scientists, atheists, agnostic, across the spectrum, like about this. I've never received a satisfactory answer to this specific question. It just does, like as a human being, you cannot attribute the art you see to the paint you see in the painting. It just doesn't make sense in any other context. So this is where we want to start looking at the scripture for guidance. And I picked the Quran. Other scriptures also address these questions, by the way, but we can discuss the Quran today. What does it say about creation? And by definition, the claim of the Quran is that it is the speech of the Creator. And for me, as a being that studies the universe and look at the universe, if the Quran is this indeed the speech of the Creator of this universe, it should address my questions about what is the source of this existence, and should address my human needs to understand the world that I live in and how to interpret it, and how the things are coming into existence. And it should provide an explanation, right, of like how these phenomena are coming to be, like the fundamental principles that we're describing, how they come to be, and why they are here, right? And it should explain and defines for me this conclusion that I have. I concluded that whatever created this universe must be endless, must be absolute, must be like all these qualities that I have came to realize by just observing the universe. This has nothing to do really with scripture. But I expect the Quran, if it is indeed the scripture, like the word of the creator of the universe, to address these needs for me. So yeah, we discussed this. So in a sense, so then I start reading. I need to look at the Quran to see what it says, and what I find is that Quran urges its readers to investigate, to find cracks in the fabric of of the universe, to see do the things really exist by themselves. It is challenging me. It is asking me. And by the way, like it's Quran and science, which by the way, science is just observing the universe that we live in. It like nobody owns the word science. Science means just like look out there and try to understand and observe like what things are made out of. They are both asking me to observe. So the written word and then the observed word, they are asking me to observe, use my intellect, use my intelligence to question what are the qualities that this source of existence must have. And then relate it back to my human qualities, emotions, intellect, reasoning, everything, so that it has to satisfy me. So what does the Quran says about observing the phenomena? Then when I read verses like, do they not look at the sky above them, how we have built it and made it beautiful and free of faults? Do they not look? So it's asking you like okay, observation. And to the sky, how it is raised high. And the Quran urges us to reason, actually. It challenges us to reasons in order to find out what are the qualities that the creator of these things must have, the creator, like, and the things that are being manifested. What are the qualities that this creator must have in the way that these phenomena are coming into existence? So then you see verses like, indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the day and night, there are signs of people of reason. Will they not use their reason? Can the blind and the seen be held equal? Will you not then take thought? I mean, I had to actually remove lots of verses, but something that you have to realize is once you start reading the Quran, it's interesting. Once you start reading the Quran from this light, you find it full with this type of word. Like any page I open, you will find some reference of, aren't you using your intellect? Aren't you using your reasoning? To the point where it's very hard to miss. So the Quran is really asking its readers to use the existence to answer the purpose of the existence of all the things and the purpose of existence of ourselves, of human beings, that can respond and appreciate and understand the things that are being created. So you see like verses like, and we have not created the heavens and the earth and all of that between them in mere idle play. This is like I think what you were mentioning about like psychology of, in the sense of like, it is so like, do we really think that all this order and creation is like mere play, right? Like it becomes daunting. It becomes hellish to think. That is the definition of hell, to think that all this order has no connection with me. And I mean, that's how I define hell, right? Because not attributing the things themselves to creator, to creator that knows me. So the definition of the Quran in this context, actually, is there a question in the chat? No? Okay. So then the definition of the Quran in this light becomes
maybe
yeah.
down the road, if we can, tadabbur and tafakkur. I'm wondering the application of that to science, the nuance, but maybe later if we can reference that.
Yeah, sure. We can come back to it in the questions. Okay, so then the definition of the Quran in this context is the interpreter of the meaning of the observable universe. Like as I'm observing the world, I refer to the Quran to interpret the events that I am observing. And then the purpose of the Quran in this context becomes the guide, like what guides human beings to know who their creator is. Because I know, like from observing the world, there is only so much I can do, in the sense I can say whoever created this must be A, B, C, like absolute, powerful, and so on. But then there is a limit to kind of taking me beyond describing like who, like guiding me through the process of getting to know this creator more. This is where I need the Quran. This is where I need the revelation. The Quran urges, and this is what we've been the theme on, is the Quran urges its readers to study the perfect creation in the world, in the universe, to get to know their absolute creator better. And this is across the verses that we find in the Quran. And just to quickly to kind of illustrate the point, I mean, everyone knows this surah. He is God, the absolute one. So this is very critical because it's defining who the creator is. It's the absolute one, the eternal. He begets not, and neither is he begotten, and so on, right? So it's like defining who this creator is for me. The other verse that most people know, his throne extends over the heavens and the earth. It's making the creator like the God. There is no God but him, the ever living, the ever watchful. It's introducing my creator to me, and that's what I would expect from the Quran, which makes it that compatibility of the written word and then the observed word are compatible, because I can get to a certain point with my senses, but I need the revelation to kind of guide me through getting to know who this creator is even further. So the creator of the universe speaks in his guide book, the Quran. It urges its readers to study the perfection of creation and to get to know who their absolute creator is, who the source of this existence is. And I mean, to kind of wrap up and get back to the title we started with, is that all the quarks and fundamental matter and the stars and galaxies and everything in between, they're all speaking to us. So then the question is, are we listening? That's it. Thank you for listening and for the questions as well. Jazakumullah khairan. So you had the question, Haidar?
Just, I guess, the concept of thinking and pondering over the creation, tadabbur and tafakkur.
Right. So the concepts of tadabbur and tafakkur is the act of thinking, of reasoning, of trying to think about this creation. What is its source? And a lot of the verses we've been covering are asking us precisely to do this, to do the tafakkur and to do the tadabbur, to try to think, what is the source of this existence? How does it? Who is the creator of the universe? How does it relate to me? Right. So I think this is really like it. Science asks us to look at the universe, and then the Quran, the scripture, is also asking us use your do science essentially. Like the Quran is asking us, everyone should be a scientist. I mean, that's what it's asking us. You should go and think at every level. It doesn't have to be, like at CERN, or it doesn't have to be a telescope. At every level, just observing, how things are coming to be, how I am, like my emotions as I'm experiencing the world, as I'm experiencing beauty, as I'm experiencing, like just to kind of come to understand, the qualities of my creator.
Tadabbur is an interesting word. For example, when you solve a problem or a formula in physics or mathematics, you follow a way and come and reach the conclusion and say equation is this.
Right.
But do you go and check again?
Yes.
Go back and
yes.
Did I follow the right way?
Yes, always.
Going back and checking yourself again and tadabbur. Not only thinking straight away. No, because it comes from dubur. Dubur is the back, go back. Tadabbur, going back to the beginning and rethinking again to make sure and consolidate your conclusion that it's absolutely correct and makes sense.
Right.
It's an interesting word.
Just to relate what Brother Ali said for Haidar and company, just the concept of tadabbur means reiterating, re-looking at the evidence, rechecking over and over and over again until you become satisfied, until you have no doubt about your conclusions, essentially. Right?
That is how the universe is really coming into existence or created it is continuously renewing and demonstrating that, look, it is an absolute qualities, power needs to be done by a one who is the absolute one. So that look at there is no end in his act of creation.
It's quite an active endeavor, and I think it's which stresses what you're both saying, that it really requires a not just an active state of mind, but an active physical process of examining, as you said, the evidence and turning it around and examining and just being thoroughly satisfied and just ongoing process.
Yes. Yeah, Jazakallah. Any more questions? Yes.
Also, the number also like, you know, when you drive in and you say like bumper to bumper.
Yes.
It's back to back. So it's like every ayah, you take it back to back, the front, the beginning, it leads you to the conclusion, like who's source of existence.
Right, like as you're studying the verses, you like that are asking you to look at the universe, re-examine and re-examine. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Like you just did.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much for your talk. I have two questions. I was wondering if you have journal articles or books you've written for us around topics of this talk that deal with interdimensional physics and philosophy and spirituality, or just in theoretical physics generally. And then I had a question for you, but should I go straight to that?
I mean, like, I'm going to be honest with you, like for the first one, I mean, that's why I'm like talking now, because like it's very rare to find, because the problem is there is lots of, and actually like I have a very good friend of mine. He used to be one of my professors, physics. Now, like it gives lots of lectures related to like kind of religion and science. The problem I have is that I have not found. Usually, it goes into the kind of the idea of, you know, like the miraculousness of the Quran and which is important, but this is not like like it's a different way of looking at it's very rare, to be honest. Like I haven't found like a good reference other than, you know, like studying in, you know, like circles like this to kind of like especially the intersection, as you mentioned, like physics.
The audience and the virtual are asking for the question to be repeated.
Sure. So the question is, are there any books or papers or references that we can read that gives us this interpretation of fundamental science and physics, modern physics, and this understanding of the Quran? I don't know, Brother Ali, do you have?
We have been trying to understand the Quran in such a way that we can utilize it for our daily life.
Right.
But unfortunately, no practical document that we have.
Yes.
We have to study, find out, and try to present this, understand the Quran, and share with our friends. Every Tuesday we have it here.
Yes.
So we do this kind of studies, but there is no textbook.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Muslim world is sleeping.
Yes.
They are not utilizing the Quran, and we have to do something.
Yeah. So studying the Quran and like kind of from this perspective is probably like, yeah, it's very important.
Muslim history or tradition comes from studying the Quran within itself, not in connection with the creation out there. So that there is only one leg is functioning, not two legs. For example, the Quran is the speech of the universe, the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
So that creation of the universe must be the witness and utilized to understand what he says. This correlation between the universe and the Quran, since they come from the same source as they claim, the Quran says, I am the speech of the creator of the universe. But the tradition reduced it to speech of the creator of human beings.
Yeah.
But human beings exist within the whole universe. This connection is not tied up in traditional Islamic studies.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it is a must now. It is a must that this study must be done, as our friend there requested. I am looking, I have been looking for years for such a book. No, there is only one book that somehow gives reference to understanding the Quran through the witnessing of the universe.
Right.
One book I came across
Right.
so far.
Can you
Right.
tell us?
Sorry?
Dr. Maurice, are you talking about Dr. Maurice? Dr.
I said, can you
talking
tell
about
us the
Dr.
book?
Maurice
Who?
Bukhari? There is a professor it's called Maurice Bukhari.
No. It doesn't study.
For the
Quran.
sister, she was asking.
No, I mean, somebody is called he's Nusi. It's very,
Yeah.
not everybody knows about
Yeah.
him, but he gives the methodology.
Right. Like how to read the Quran from the existence perspective.
Alongside with the
Yeah,
universe's
okay.
witnessing
Right.
and human feelings.
Yeah.
But it needs careful reading
And
because
studying.
he uses traditional language, but the method is new.
Right.
Now, in order to see the method, you have to be patient with him because he uses descriptive language, examples,
Right.
but not the scientific examples.
Right.
Needs
So
somehow.
you're, so
And-
you're not
yeah.
recommending him, basically.
No, I think he is. I
You
think.
have to be patient
Yeah. It's
Okay,
just.
yeah.
with it.
You had a second question. Or, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, just I wasn't wondering if there's like an Islamic test, but more like just thinkers, you know, whether they're physicists like you or philosophers, but I guess that's something I should dig into.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then this question sort of relates. I'm curious I don't know if you were just willing to reflect on your experience as a scientist who believes in God and sees a spiritual order to things, and just any way you might like to reflect on that, because usually that's a pretty lonely position to be in.
I mean, like so like something that is very important to realize is like even like within the scientific community, like when you so generally like people are not against God and the concept, even though they might say it outwardly, but when you kind of dig deeper, usually it's like more like they don't like the constitution of it, they don't like the oppression, they don't like aspect, but then they can sometimes group all of it under the same umbrella. But there are lots of people that are agnostics in the sense that they say, like statements like I had in the talk, where they would say, yeah, this or like you cannot recreate this planet based on everything. Like we have hundreds of parameters that are just right for life to exist, and they cannot wrap around. So, like I wouldn't say like there is an intention to deflect and to avoid and to bias the language. There is definitely that intention in the writings and but you know, but like I think like it comes back to what I said earlier is the science is the study of the universe. It's the study of my creator's work. I study that, right? And then I interpret it the way I want to interpret it. And then others, I mean, they are free to interpret it the way like they want to. So in a sense that like there are these 2 points is like people like generally hide behind like kind of biased language, and you just have to be careful, and you just have to kind of be aware of that, right? And because like what we do not want, or what I generally what I do not want is kind of this separation of thinking. Now, when I enter the lab, kind of leave religion outside. It's no longer. And then when you exit, now okay, then it's like almost like having two, you know, like two people, right? That's not that's not what it should be, and that's not like we can definitely, as we study, as you do your science, as you like, you can interpret it the way that makes sense to you, because the findings are the same. We're all observing the same universe, and there is no reason to reject or decline science. Science is the study and the observation of the world we live in and the universe we live in. So I fully embrace it, but use the interpretation that makes sense to me. Okay? Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
I think very often we tend to use these scientific discoveries as a way to understand the Quran, a way to connect more to Allah's words and to just understand the universe as you put it. So I was curious, is there an opportunity, especially for like busy Muslim physicists, for to know more, about it. I feel like there's, I mean, I feel like as a Muslim physicist, seeing that Allah is saying so much, sometimes things that we don't necessarily understand in the physical sense of the in the physical sense of it. But do you think like there is opportunity to use the Quran as a point of beginning?
Okay, so let me just repeat it so the question is, the sister is asking, can we use the Quran as the starting point for understanding the universe and understanding facts about the universe? That's the question.
And for like knowing more.
And for knowing more about the universe.
Investigating more.
Right. So let me address that question kind of in two ways. Like when so I already have let's just assume, like, not start from from any background. I have a universe created for me. I start from the universe. I don't need the Quran to tell me about what I already see. Why do I need the Quran? Like, the question for me is, I only need to go to the Quran to help me interpret the things that I'm already observing. So that's one side. So that's how I see the different, like the role of the Quran in my interpretation as a scientist, right? The other thing is, I do not delve too much into like the miraculousness of the Quran, even though it is there, right? The problem is, it's very a slippery slope, and it's not the purpose of the Quran to try to like tie back, kind of almost like, I made up my mind, I already decided that there is a God, then go to the Quran and then find things that help me validate that conclusion. That's not the role of the Quran for me. And actually, because like science is changing all the time, facts that used to be true yesterday are no longer true today. So I cannot tie my belief system for something that is changing all the time. And I just mentioned, like, like 30, 40 years ago, we thought we understood 95% of the universe. Now we only know that we only understood 5%. And who knows tomorrow what will happen? It will change all the time. So I can't really I don't need the science to prove the Quran for me. That's not what its purpose is. What I say is, I'm observing the universe. It's in front of me. I need to make sense of it. Here are the questions I have. Does the Quran help me answer this question? If yes, I go with it. If no, I reject it, right? So it really should be starting from a perspective of an honest attempt of finding the truth, wherever that is, without trying to start with preconceived conclusions and then going backward to try to prove them that they were true because they were told 1,000 years ago or something like this, right? It's a different way of thinking. That is we need to be very careful because of the reasons I mentioned. Does that help, or does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I was just coming from a different like point of view, because it does make sense to use the Quran as like an interpreter. The Quran is there as a guide to help you make sense of all of these like all of the universe in general. I think I was just coming from a point where I am trying to understand what Allah means by this, right? And I'm trying to investigate that. That makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and we so that aspect never ends in the sense of trying to understand, right? Like, what is how I can understand the Quran based on the world I live in. This is just a continuous like effort, right? I don't know if others have like thoughts on this question.
I think scientists definitely use the Quran.
Say that again.
I think scientists definitely use the Quran for a different perspective, or to study things, different theories. From what I think, I mean, why wouldn't they use the Quran? There's explicit interpretations of some of the scientific things that exist in the world.
So like, again, I am like I do not use the Quran to try to find new science, for example. I already have the universe for me. Why would I go to this ancient book that's written like a very long time ago to try to like, there is the universe in front of me, let me study it. But where that falls short is trying to interpret what is the role of this universe in this. That's where I really need the scripture to kind of answer. Yeah.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah.
I guess for like what the sister was saying, I know exactly what you're talking about. I guess for like, it's like when I read the, like for right now, I'm 34. When I read the Quran when I was 23, I read it from one lens. And now when I read it, I see it from a completely different lens. So you're saying something like that along the lines where it's like, you're constantly changing, your knowledge base is changing. So like, maybe, not to say it's going to limit my intellect if I do use the Quran as a reference point, but as a way to kind of come back to it, to solidify what I'm seeing in the world, right? Is that what you're saying? Like, because it's ever changing, right? I can't go based on what I was thinking 10 years ago.
Of course.
This is the answer.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where it comes, like, re-examine the evidence, like, because like it's not a like the building conviction is not a static thing, like I do once and then I'm done. It's continuously renewed. I always need new information. I think that's what the concept of tadabbur, like I always need to renew, because based on new information, but then the Quran is challenging me. Once you have this new information, once you have new scientific evidence, go again and re-examine the word. Do you get to a different conclusion? Right? Yes.
What are the consequences if one professional academic steals work from another academic and claims that as their own, and they get caught? What are the consequences of that?
A lot, like disciplinary action, like there is a lot of actions. Yeah.
So it sounds to me like they should all be disciplined because they're taking the creator's work and attributing it to some other, something else.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's like it's a spell, ultimately, because I like the fact that you highlighted the language. I'm just stating
right. Yeah.
Because within the language is a worldview.
Yes, of course, it's an interpretation.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
and so this interpretation removes all appreciation.
Right.
For the actual author of the work.
Right.
For example, you were highlighting like the Higgs boson has these qualities.
Right.
Well,
or he's acting.
Exactly. It's doing things that it can't do.
Right.
And it's like looking at a scientist claiming that he produced work that he did not produce.
Right.
Like it's pathological across the board, actually, if you ask me. I don't.
Right.
Because what happens is then everybody else takes this interpretation because science has an authority.
Right.
An emotional authority today.
Yes.
And so people end up removing appreciation for the work from the work itself.
Right.
The work being the qualities of the universe.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for summarizing what I discussed in like all this time. That's exactly what my point was. We have to be very careful about the language that the naturalistic interpretation of science is using. We say, like, yes, describe the universe for us. We would like to know, but don't use your interpretation. Don't impose on us your worldview, because that is what's happening.
I feel like that's dangerous, though, because I feel like if a human being is writing, there has to be a worldview. Like,
of course,
it's possible. So the worldview is either one or the other.
And
you give appreciation to the creator, or you don't give appreciation to the creator. That's it.
Yes.
You can only do one of the two.
Absolutely.
Appreciation is there.
Yes.
But you don't
acknowledge it.
Or you don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Ignore it. That is your choice.
Yes. Yeah, I can look away, but it's there. Yeah.
And I've said that these in these discussions, they've never given you a satisfactory answer.
Right.
So it just feels like a spell to me. I study communications.
Yeah.
The idea of like what does language do to people?
Yeah. يلا اوكي. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك لا علم لنا الا ما علمتنا انك انت العليم الحكيم، واخر دعواهم ان الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. آمين.
Thank you for joining everyone here as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So the live streaming stopped, and we, inshallah, this is the end of our series of discussions, and I will be going away on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We used to have it for years. Now, but until I come back, there will be no classes. Until I come back, I don't know where I am coming. When I come back, I will inform the people, and we will let you know that we resume our discussion. A kind of summer
break.
we are having, inshallah.
When is the last class?
Today is the next Monday. I'm going somewhere.
I just
far
started
away.
deciding I'm going to come every Tuesday.
That's what I believe. If I don't renew myself, learn new things, I'm not able to present you new things. So I have to go and study. I'm going to go to a course. So study the Quran, how to understand.
Be online anymore, or not
Sorry?
until no more online courses either for now?
No, because I don't know where I'm at. Maybe I may be in a middle of desert. So
Okay.
take a course there with the
yeah.
classical education of the Quran, or
Wow,
the
glad I came
details
today
of the
after so
Quran.
many years of
It
not
needs
coming. Yeah.
full concentration.
Good for you.
Inshallah.
No, but when I come back, I share with you.
Okay.
Inshallah. I don't know when,
wonderful.
depending
No,
on
that's
the
all right.
conditions. If I find it useful, then they continue. If not, 2 weeks later, I'll come back.
Inshallah.
No, I'll try my best, inshallah.
Yeah.
So we will let you know.
There is a sister, she was asking about Quran and science. She is Dr. Maurice, he's a French. You want to take his name, or? She was asking about Quran and science.
Yeah. I do not know him. Yeah.
Dr. Maurice Bukai?
What last name?
Bukai. He's a French. Yeah, if you want to look at the phone, I'll write it down.
Good. All right. Alhamdulillah.
So thank
I guess,
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for. It was engaging, so I appreciate it actually. Yeah.
Is it yours?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Let me take it. Allah. Assalamu alaikum. Nice meeting you. Yeah, of course. Yeah. What's your name?
Khalid.
Khalid. Nice meeting you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you a student here? Or?
I am just with Ali Murmur's class. But
Okay.
I'm not with the NYU. I just
Okay,
come here for the
inshallah.
community and stuff. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
mashallah, I appreciate it because it's really wonderful because we go from like this foo-foo la-la talk and now
Yes.
we get like really practical and like,
Right.
can you see it with your own eyes or is it just this emotional thing?
Right.
And
It's
a big
very
difference.
important.
Yeah.
Like I think what's like it's not, because sometimes we have a tendency of like compartmentalizing, like everything is like either I'm thinking with my head. No, I'm
It's
a
the
human
modern
being.
world, right? Because you got a
Yeah,
foot doctor
you have
and a
like
heart doctor, but the two are
exactly.
not connected.
Yeah, right. So, but I am a human being, like
Yeah.
either with like my heart or like everything should be like connected, right? So no, I appreciate it, and feel free to keep in touch. I would love to continue the
How would
discussion.
I?
I can give you my phone number or
Okay,
my
yeah, sure, 'cause
email.
I don't
Yeah.
just- that's great. Yeah. Because I appreciate it, and there's not a lot of people who
No,
will,
yeah, don't
who
think
will
about
question
this.
on that level.
Yeah, let me.
I forget who said it. It says people would rather die than think.
Especially about existence, it's
That's what it is. Yeah.
or it's Othmane Rifki.
How do you prefer, doctor?
No, Othmane. No, I'm not.
Some people take it very seriously.
No, here. Yeah, just message me your name and then inshallah.
Yes, I will right now, actually.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing, Othmane? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mohammed. I'm a PhD student in physics at
nice.
CUNY Graduate Center.
What are you studying?
Sort of like applications of quantum computing to light matter systems,
Nice.
atomic systems. If you're
Very
familiar
cool.
with that.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So you are the future. You're going to replace all standard classical computers.
Inshallah.
Very good, very good.
So yeah, I mean, it's very interesting talk. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, of course.
I have
Yeah.
plenty of questions, but
Yeah.
one thing that I was thinking. This is something that I've been thinking about since I went to the APS this March.
Yeah. I used to go to these when I was a student all the time. Did you have a poster or you presented?
I presented.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I met some Muslimin. I actually met quite a few Muslimin. It was surprising. I went to a masjid and I would see them with like their tags. I was thinking, because it's so disparate, like you would just see them here and there. I was thinking since then, like if maybe we can create some sort of initiative for Muslim physicists.
I would be happy to
discuss this.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm happy to. To discuss. I mean, I need to disclose that I no longer do physics. I've left physics. I just left physics a couple of years ago, but I spent 10, 12 years. I did a PhD and a postdoc, and but I would still I still love physics, as you can see. So like I would love to stay connected, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so inshallah, I guess we can exchange numbers.
Yeah, sure.
If you have LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, you can add me on LinkedIn. Either way. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll add you on LinkedIn just as.
Yeah.
It has a big consequences. It have a big message behind.
So you're another thing I want to ask you, because you're in AI now.
Yeah, I am.
So,
yes, I made the switch.
It's the switch. It's the switch that we all have in mind at some point.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask, how exactly, like, was it? Did you just immediately switch, or did you have to take some time to?
No, I mean, I mean, at CERN we used to deal with like huge amounts of data and pattern recognition and machine learning. So it was very easy to kind of make it was like a very easy transition because I was already doing machine learning. Now you have to learn speech, language processing, like all of these new. But for a physicist, it's like nothing. To be honest with you, like like you already have the training in the background, so it should not be a problem.
It's like mainly statistics.
Statistics, computing, like like dealing with large amounts of data. So math, of course, is very important. So all of these are like like quite important to use. But you have to get like there is a list. I mean, message me. I'm happy to share with you. There is like a list of papers that you need to kind of that are enough to tell, like 30, 40 papers will tell you like 90% of or 95% of what's out there. We'll be happy to share that with you. Well. Yeah. Lots of people ask me this all the time, so I kind of like dialed down like what you need to learn and know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And is this something that you're going to be continuing in the future discussions like this?
Yeah, I would love to. Would love to. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like Brother Ali is like pushing me like for a while. It's like you have to give. Like, so then finally he cornered me and he's like, okay, this day you are going to give this talk. But I would love to. Have you been coming to Brother Ali's? Yeah, this is the first. Yeah. So he's no, but like I would be happy. I would be happy to continue these conversations.
Yeah, because there's so many questions, like so many things that.
And also, like I don't have the answers. I'm like also just thinking about these questions at the same time as you, right? Like I just share what I learned so far. But yeah.
There's so many interesting things, like things that you notice in general, like many of the physical principles seem to follow.
I don't know if we close this or sorry. Let me just.